I find it really difficult talking about things that I enjoy, because how do I just tell you that it's great? You're distracting me again. You're distracting me again. Look, we're dressed the same. I dress like you today. I am also orange. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I am talking about 10 audiobooks that I listened to in 2020 that I just cannot stop thinking about. There is something about listening to an audiobook that just takes me back to being a child. My dad used to read to me as a kid. Audiobooks take me back there, especially when I listen to fantasy audiobooks, especially when there's some kind of like emotional trigger there anyway. There's just something incredibly powerful about listening to an audiobook. Maybe it's the choice of voice actor, maybe it's the pacing, maybe it's the style, maybe it's simply just the accent, I don't know. But sometimes there's just an audiobook that just gets you, and this is a list of 10 of those. So there's no particular order, there's no one better than any others. It just so happens to be that these are the audiobooks that I really enjoyed last year. It just so happens to be that these were audiobooks that I really enjoyed last year. So I will just kind of talk you through them and talk to you about why I love them so much. They will always have a very special place in my heart, and I'm really glad that I have Audible so that I can listen to them again. So the first one I want to talk about is A Song Below Water. This was a 2020 debut by Bethany C. Morrow. It is about two young black women who are experiencing different forms of prejudice, and it uses mythology as a metaphor for the Black Lives Matter movement. Essentially, one of them is a siren, and though sirens aren't illegal, using their powers are. It gets quite dark, it has quite some poignant moments, but there was something really ethereal about the way this was read. I mean, it's a beautifully crafted story. The story in itself is beautifully done. Very poignant moments, and I think the audiobook just allowed you to get into those moments, and the fact that it's a debut just made it even better. I think it was just so beautifully done. So we'll definitely be listening to this again. I can't wait to see what Bethany C. Morrow does with her next one. It was just, yeah, it was just magical. Really enjoyed this one. The next is Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. Now this I think was one of two, it might have been three comedian memoirs that I listened to over the span of 2020, and Jonathan Van Ness actually does the audiobook himself. Now if you enjoy any content put out by Jonathan Van Ness, whether it's his many podcasts, his Instagram content, or the original Queer Eye, you know how much energy they bring to anything that they do, and I just loved this. I thought it was really beautiful. I love his references to Anastasia. As you know, I'm an Anastasia fan, love that. So there was just stuff in there that there was humorous moments, there were sad moments, and the fact that his voice is just so engaging anyway. There is just something really fun about this, and it's a very short listen, but I would highly recommend it. This was recommended to me by my sister-in-law, and I'm so glad she did, because I thought it was great. Loved this. If you're looking for something that has those heartwarming moments but also is quite sad, yeah, would definitely recommend. It was great. It's about his entire life, so it starts from his childhood, his relationship with his mother, his relationship with his father, don't know why I call them mother and father, mum and dad, whatever, his relationship with the powerful women in his life, powerful men in his life, and yeah, like I said, it has some really poignant moments. You can see his ups and downs, and you can see just, you know, he really does like kind of let you in, and it's just beautiful. When you hit a memoir that you're like, it makes you feel something, not just for them but for yourself as well. I think that's a really powerful thing, and that's exactly what this is. And the audiobook being done by him was just a stroke of genius, because it just made me love it all the more. The next one is Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, which is a really sad story about a woman who wants to get pregnant. Trigger warnings, there is miscarriage and child death in this audiobook. So it's set in Nigeria. Essentially, this woman is desperately trying to get pregnant, and she can't, so she goes to like a witch doctor who does all this magic, and she thinks she's fallen pregnant, and for months she's carrying this belly and she's waiting for the baby to be born, and the baby isn't born. Baby doesn't exist, and it kind of just starts this spiral of trauma around not being able to have children. No, I need to hold you because I'm talking about traumatic experiences. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I can't have children. I have PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Essentially, there are lots of different symptoms to PCOS, but it can also affect fertility. And for me, although I don't have to worry about facial hair or anything like that, that's kind of an outward symptom, I cannot have children. Not without a miracle or medical intervention anyway. I thought this would be quite a hard read for me, and it was very sad, but I'm not really interested in having children at all, so it didn't impact me as much as it might impact others. So if you are going to listen to this one, I want you to go in with all of the trigger and content warnings you can get. So the next bit that I say is going to be a spoiler, but essentially after all this trauma, we actually find out that it is not her fault that she cannot have children. It is something to do with the fertility of her partner, and her partner has been keeping that from her the entire time. So this was a very, very sad, very, very emotionally wrought audiobook, and it was so spectacularly done. It doesn't say if it's an award winner, but it should be an award winner. It was a beautifully written book, but it's a powerful, powerful story. And if, like me, you have an emotional attachment to audiobooks and they hit you, they just hit different, I think, then go into that one with your eyes open, but I would definitely recommend it as a story. The next is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This is an Alice in Wonderland, but when Alice returns from Wonderland and desperately wants to get back. It's a there is a collection of them. I think the sixth one has just come out, but it was my first experience listening to this as an audiobook. I'd never read the books before, and there was just something really magical about it. There was a lot of whimsy, there's a lot of really poignant issues, and the balance between the two is expertly done. Now, I know that with a few of the audiobooks, Shauna Maguire has actually narrated them herself, and I think that makes a massive difference, because I think then she's going to be focusing on the bits that she thinks are important to focus on, and I think that makes a massive, massive difference. So if you're looking for a short read fantasy, an urban fantasy, this also has murder mystery themes in it as well. The others I don't think do. I'm now the 3 in. They haven't had like a murder mystery thing. Some of them have been like your classic adventurer's journey of self-discovery, stuff like that. But they are LGBTQ representative, and they have quite a diverse cast, which I highly recommend. And I just think if you need a short listen, I don't think any of the audiobooks are over 4 hours. So if you listen to them on like ×2, which is what I do, that's 2 hours. That's an evening. It's lovely. They are great little reads. So would definitely recommend Every Heart a Doorway and the rest of the series, because I'm really enjoying them. Labelle Savage. Now, I love Philip Pullman, I love his world, and like I said, there is just something about his writing and having it read to me like I'm a child that is just such a magical mix. And Labelle Savage was just so beautiful. It's voiced by Michael Sheen, and he does all the accents, whether it's Bristolian, Welsh, like all of them. They're so expertly done. It just makes it so much more engaging. When you've got an actor or a voice actor that can actually do the voices of an audiobook, it makes such a difference. Not just because it individualises each character, but because it really puts you in that place. I think having lived in Bristol, even for just a short time, those moments when he's using the Bristolian accent makes such a difference. And it just really it tugs on what you already know and understand. And because he's Welsh, the Welsh accent is obviously spot on, and it just feels so heartwarming and so welcoming. I just thought it was a great audiobook. The book itself is massive, so I got the audiobook as well as the hardback. I got gifted the hardback, and then thought there is absolutely no way I will be able to read this on my TBR without some assistance, so I burnt through that audiobook in a weekend. It was fantastic. Obviously the story is about Lyra Silvertongue, but before she's Silvertongue and before all of the narrative that comes in his Dark Materials trilogy. I should have just said it's a prequel. That's the word I'm looking for that I couldn't remember. Introduces you to other young characters. They go through their own little journey. It has biblical themes, as the His Dark Materials series does. It's a fantastic story. The relationship between the characters is flawless. I just loved every element of it, and again, if you need something heartwarming that's going to take you back to your childhood, I would absolutely recommend this novel as an audiobook. I would absolutely recommend this audiobook. Piranesi. Now, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but so few of them were so confusing. The narrative of Piranesi is very strange anyway, because it's about a man living in a labyrinth, and that's literally all I can tell you without giving the entire story away. But I think if I had been reading this as a paperback or a hardback rather than as an audiobook, I probably would have given up, because it was just, my brain just couldn't wrap around it. But there was something about the way the audiobook developed that it felt like literary fantasy to begin with, and then developed into this murder mystery. And it has those historic, the way the language is developed, it feels very historical as well, because that's Susanna Clarke's vibe, is to take historical fiction and make it feel like a fantasy, but lean into the vocabulary you'd see in historical fiction. And it's just a lovely balance, and the way the audiobook is done is beautiful. And I can't remember if there's I think there might have been moments where they included sound effects as well, or whether it was just a case of it was so beautifully described that I felt like I heard them. I may have just completely made that up, but there is water that moves through the labyrinth as well, and in my mind, like I said, I might be completely making this up, in my mind you can hear the waves and you can hear the sound of sirens when they're in the real world and things like that. So if that didn't actually happen and it's just all in my head, that's even better. Because I've just put that in there when it didn't exist. As an audiobook, I felt like it took something that is not easily accessible, made it accessible, but without dumbing it down or making it impossible to kind of relate to it in that way. It was a beautiful book. I did rate it 4 stars in the end. It didn't get a 5 because it confused me a little bit too much, but it blew me away. Like it was spectacular, and the audiobook just made it even better. I really, really enjoyed that. Power by Naomi Alderman is another one of those ones where the voice actor did different accents depending on where the characters were, and that made a massive difference because you have some Southern American characters and you have some British characters, Nigerian characters, those 3 very diverse accents. So be able to match them all and still make it feel authentic, I thought was pretty spot on. The narrative, much like Stay With Me, is far more brutal than you're expecting it to be. It is a dystopian, definitely on the Handmaid's Tale end of dystopia, not the Hunger Games end of, just in case you were wondering. But it's a very powerful read, and essentially the narrative of this is women develop an ability to control electricity through their body, and they are given this power, and the moment that physical difference between men and women changes, so does political and structural changes. And there are elements of it where it makes it feel like it's fiction, and other moments where it makes you feel like it's non-fiction, and it's very cleverly done. And there are different voices. There is an additional voice actor for the male protagonist, which I think also made a massive difference. There is only one male protagonist, so it's a very short part for him, but it really added to like an extra dimension to that story, and I thought it was very cleverly done. I'm really glad, again, that I listened to this as an audiobook because I felt like I really was able to understand those characters more, hearing it through their voices directly, whereas obviously I don't know about you, but I don't really struggle. There are specific voices I hear in my head for specific characters, but 9 times out of 10 it is tinged by my voice, so hearing it in someone else's voice, it just makes it easier to engage in access. Ironically, something very powerful about the book Power, and the audiobook is a definite recommend from me. The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett is a series that I have listened to before. I really, really enjoy the Tony Robinson adaptations of these. Now, The Colour of Magic is not done by Tony Robinson, but they still have a very, very engaging voice actor. And there are moments in it where their voice sounds really far away, almost like he's in a church, and it really helps you distinguish between the difference between the characters' voices and this all-seeing narrator. Now, The Colour of Magic is the first in the Rincewind series, but it's also the first, I think it's the first Discworld novel ever. It's about a young wizard called Rincewind who is useless because he only has one spell, and that spell will destroy the universe, so he can't use that spell, and he starts hanging out with this tourist who just gets him into a whole bunch of trouble. It is your classic adventurer's journey. The way the narrator tells it is really funny. It is just a bizarre fantasy, and there's something about bizarre fantasies that I just really, really enjoy. This one really did just tap straight back into my childhood, much like with Labelle Savage, because it's a series that I recognise from my childhood. It holds up. It was a great listen. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm now 3 books into the Rincewind series, and I probably will do the whole lot. I enjoy them that much, so it deserved yet another shout out. The next is The Cemetery Boys. Now, again, I don't know if this is a debut, but it's certainly a 2020 release. I couldn't get a paperback. I still don't have a paperback. I really want a paperback of this. Couldn't get hold of a hardback because they'd all sold out almost immediately. And if I wanted to order one, it was going to be very expensive from America. And I know that a lot of people who did order from America really struggled to get hold of them because it came out during lockdown. So that was a ball ache. So I listened to the audiobook instead, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. I was nervous about a YA urban fantasy because they were my favourites as a teen, and sometimes you listen back to something that you really enjoyed as a teen and it's just not as good anymore. I was kind of worried that would be the case, but actually it was a fantastic story, and again the audiobook just did something, it just tapped into the nostalgia that I used to enjoy those kind of books, and it's a really beautiful story. So this is about a young man named Yadriel who wants his family to understand that he is a young man and that he wants to be a brujo, which I think is how you say it. I'm trying really hard. In the book, in the audiobook, the accent is spot on, so the words just kind of fall effortlessly. I'm really sorry if I butchered that. So essentially, depending on whether you're a man or a woman, you can use different magics, and he desperately wants to prove that he has the magic of a man because he is a man. And it's a really beautiful story, lots of LGBTQ representation, lovely use of, like, I loved the mythology in this. I thought it was really, really beautifully done. I mean, it was my first kind of instance where I had read something related to Mexican mythology, so that was really intriguing. Like, I've seen it in TV and stuff. Hearing it, again, like I said, when you hear it in an audiobook, it just hits different, and it just kind of, I just fell into this world. Yeah, and it was lovely. It was a lovely read, and it made me cry. I'll admit it made me cry, and it deserved to be on this top 10 list. It's a great book, great audiobook, and I'm really excited to see what Aidan Thomas comes out with this year. And the last one is another sad boy. I listened to The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and again, it was one of those books where I hadn't really read it before, wasn't really that interested in it, but it was on script, and actually it blew me away. There was something very, very poignant about that story, and hearing it from the voice of a young man, whether the voice actor is actually a young man or just sounds like a young man, just really kind of humanized it. And I think it is a very human story about depression, about teen angst and the journeys that we go through as young people. Like, I'm not gonna be 29 in like a week, but anyway. Yeah, there was just, like I said, it was just a beautiful, beautiful audiobook. So if you've been like umming and ahhing about this book, you're not really sure it's for you, I would listen to the audiobook because it is incredibly powerful, and it's just beautifully done. It's a really well crafted audiobook, and that's really all I've got to say about it. I think the story is one that I think quite a few people will be familiar with, and it's one that has kind of instigated quite a few novels since then, but it is a beautiful piece, and the audiobook was 10 out of 10, would definitely recommend. So that's it, those are my top 10 audiobooks from 2020. I hope it was clear from my face that I've really enjoyed all of them and would absolutely recommend all of these audiobooks. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite audiobook was, and other than that, I hope you have a nice day.